There's smoke, a lot of it. Flames are coming from the yogurt shop on Anderson Lane. It's just past midnight.
December 6th, 1991, firefighters rush to the scene.
They expect a small kitchen fire.
Maybe an electrical fault. But as they step inside, they find something far worse. 4 bodies, burned,
Bound. And a crime so brutal that it will haunt Austin for decades. This is the story of the Austin yogurt shop murders. And after more than 30 years, it's still unsolved.
The neon were open, sign flickered in the window of the small, I can't believe it's yogurt, shop on Anderson Lane, casting a faint glow onto the sidewalk. It was a crisp Friday night, December 6, 1991, and they in Austin, Texas, carried the familiar scent of damp asphalt mixed with the sweetness of frozen yogurt. Inside the shop, 4 teenage girls were finishing their shift, unaware that in just a few hours, their names would be forever etched into the city's darkest history. Eliza Thomas, 17, wiped down the counters with a damp cloth, her ponytail swaying as she hummed along to a pop song playing softly from the radio behind the counter. She had worked at the shop for months, knew the routine well, and was looking forward to getting home early to study for an upcoming test. Her CEO worker, Jennifer Harbison, also 17, was at the register, counting the evening's earnings. She was the responsible one, a Girl Scout, a natural leader, and someone her younger sister, Sarah Harbison, 15, looked up to. Sarah sat on a stool near the back, flipping through a magazine, waiting for her older sister to finish work so they could head home together. The last girl in the shop, Amy Ayers, 13, was the youngest and the most full of life. She had tagged along that night to keep Sarah company, and now she leaned over the counter, sneaking samples of the different yogurt flavors, giggling whenever Jennifer scolded her. None of them noticed the man watching them from across the parking lot. The girls had planned a sleepover at Jennifer and Sarah's house after closing. They talked about what movies to rent, what snacks to buy. The mood was light, the air warm inside the shop despite the cold creeping in from outside. At around 9 o'clock p.m. The last known customers entered, a couple who stayed only a few minutes before leaving. They later recalled nothing unusual, except for 2 unfamiliar men lingering near the shop's entrance. The girls started their closing routine, stacking chairs, locking the freezer, taking out the trash. The night was almost over, but then the front door chimed again. The first sign of trouble was the missing lock. When police would later investigate the scene, they noticed that the shop's back door was wide open with no sign of forced entry. This meant one of 2 things. Either someone had forgotten to lock it, or someone had been let inside. Had the killers been hiding in the shop before closing? Or had they forced their way in as the girls were locking up? What is known is that between 9:45 and 11 o'clock p.m., the nightmare began. The first sign that something was wrong came when a passing patrol officer noticed smoke billowing from their yogurt shop. Within minutes, firefighters arrived, expecting a routine kitchen fire. But what they found inside would haunt them forever. The heat was intense, the air thick with the choking scent of burning plastic, scorched wood, and something else. As the firefighters battled the flames, their flashlights swept across the smoke-filled room. Then, one of them froze mid-step. Lying near the back of the store, barely visible through the haze, were 4 burned, bound bodies. They had been gagged, stripped, tied together, and shot execution style. The heat had caused the bodies to shrink and blacken, making the scene almost too gruesome to comprehend. The fire hadn't been an accident, it was set deliberately to destroy evidence. But the most chilling part, one of the girls, Amy Ayers, the youngest, was found separated from the others in another part of the shop. Unlike the others, who had died from gunshot wounds, she had a second gunshot wound to the head and was found with her body positioned differently, as if she had tried to escape. Had she woken up after the first gunshot? Had she tried to crawl? away from the flames?
No one knows. What was clear was that whoever did this had no mercy.
By the time police and reporters arrived, the fire was out, but the horror remained. Detectives quickly determined. The cash register was empty, suggesting robbery. The bodies were burned beyond recognition, delaying identification. There was no sign of forced entry, meaning the killer either had a key or let in. But the biggest problem? There were no immediate suspects. Austin police were not prepared for a case like this. Instead of preserving the crime scene, they allowed officers to walk through the remains, contaminating evidence.
Instead of securing potential witnesses, they rushed to conclusions. When DNA was later tested, it didn't match any known criminals, leaving the case cold for decades, and the real monsters responsible.
They walked away free into the dark Texas night. The Austin Police Department had never seen anything like this.
A mass murder of 4 teenage girls. Their bodies burned beyond recognition. It wasn't just a homicide. It was an execution. As detectives arrived at the "I can't believe it's yogurt"
shop, the air was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of burnt flesh.
Officers moved through the wreckage, stepping over blackened debris, shining flashlights into corners where flames had licked the walls clean. But there was a problem. That the fire had destroyed nearly everything.
The register was melted. The countertops were warped. Even crucial evidence, fingerprints, footprints, blood had been reduced to ash. And worse, the crime scene wasn't being handled carefully.
Officers, firefighters, and even reporters had already walked through the store, unknowingly contaminating what little evidence remained. This was the first mistake in what would become one of Austin's most infamous botched investigations. Even though the bodies were charred beyond recognition, detectives had a sickening suspicion of who they were. They quickly reached out to the parents of Jennifer Harbison, 17, Sarah Harbison, 15,
Eliza Thomas, 17, and Amy Ayers, 13. The girls had planned a sleepover that night.
When their parents called their friends, it became clear none of them had made it home. By 4 a.m. The police were almost certain that the 4 girls in the back of the store were Jennifer, Sarah, and Liza, and Amy. But one disturbing detail stood out. Amy Ayers, the youngest, had been found apart from the others. Her injuries were different. Had she tried to escape?
Had the killers done something even worse to her? The autopsies would later confirm the worst. The disturbing cause of death. The medical examiner's report was horrifying. Jennifer, Sarah, and Eliza had been shot once in the back of the head, execution style. Amy Ayers had been shot twice, once in the head, but it hadn't killed her.
The second shot, fired later, had been the fatal one.
The bodies had been burned after death, likely to destroy DNA evidence. But there was something else. The girls' bodies were found naked, but no clear signs of sexual assault could be determined due to the severe burning. However, authorities
couldn't rule it out. Whoever had done this had been brutal, calculated, and merciless. At first, detectives thought this was a botched robbery.
The cash register was empty.
The back door was open, suggesting someone had forced their way in,
or had been let inside. The fire seemed like an attempt to cover up evidence, but something didn't add up. Why kill 4 teenage girls, execution style, over a few $100s?
And why set a fire that could have easily drawn attention to the crime?
When police questioned the last known customers, they got a key lead. A couple who had visited the yogurt shop shortly before closing recalled seeing 2 strange men inside.
They were leaning against a wall, whispering to each other.
They didn't buy anything. Their eyes followed the girls behind the counter. One of them had a weird smile, but no one had thought much of it at the time. Police immediately released sketches of 2 unidentified men, hoping someone would recognize them, but weeks passed, and no solid leads emerged. News of the yogurt shop murders spread like wildfire. Parents stopped letting their kids go out at night.
Businesses installed new security systems.
The fear was palpable for the families of Jennifer, Sarah, and Liza, and Amy. The horror was unbearable. Who had done this?
Why?
And why weren't the police catching them? The pressure was on, and the Austin Police Department felt it in 1992. Just months after the murders, the police were desperate for an arrest. Then, a tip led them to four men: Morris Pierce, 16. At the time of the murders, Forrest Wellborn, 15. At the time, Michael Scott, 17. At the time, Robert Springsteen, 17. At the time, Pierce had been arrested for carrying a gun at a mall, and when police questioned him, he made vague statements about the murders that was enough for police to zero in on him and his friends under intense interrogation. Michael Scott and Robert Springsteen confessed to the murders, but their confessions didn't match the evidence. They couldn't describe the crime scene correctly. Their statements contradicted forensic findings. They later recanted, saying police forced them to
confess. Despite this,
Springsteen and Scott were convicted in 2001, nearly a decade after the crime. But then came the biggest twist of all. The DNA that changed everything in 2008. New DNA testing revealed something shocking. The DNA found at the crime scene did not
match any of the four suspects. This meant one thing: the real killers were still out there. Springsteen and Scott's convictions were overturned. The case was back to square one. Where are we now?
To this day, the Austin yogurt shop murders remain unsolved. The DNA evidence is still unidentified. The two strange men seen in the shop have never been found. The families of Jennifer, Sarah, and Liza, and Amy are still waiting for justice, and perhaps the most chilling thought: whoever did this might still be out there, walking free. The Austin yogurt shop murders is not just a case, it's a wound that never healed for over 3 decades. The families of Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers have lived with the unbearable knowing that their daughter's killers were never brought to justice, even after wrongful convictions, botched investigations, and decades of dead ends. The case refuses to fade away, and now, with modern forensic technology, there's one lingering question: could we be closer than ever to finding out who did this?
Theories and possible suspects. While the case remains officially unsolved, several theories have emerged. 1. The two suspicious men theory. The strongest lead from day one remains the two unidentified men seen inside the yogurt shop before closing.
They were whispering. They didn't buy anything.
They stared at the girls. Many believe these men didn't just walk away. They waited until the store was empty and then forced their way inside. But despite multiple sketches and descriptions, these two men were never identified. Could they have been drifters who left town before police could track them?
Or worse, could they still be living in Austin, hiding in plain sight? 2. The serial killer connection. Over the years, multiple convicted murderers have been considered as possible suspects, including Kenneth McDuff, a notorious Texas serial killer who was active in the early 90s.
He was known for kidnapping young women and had committed similar crimes. Edward Bell, another known killer who later confessed to multiple unsolved murders in Texas.
Tommy Linsells, a traveling serial killer who committed brutal crimes across the country.
While none of these men's DNA matched, could they have worked with an unknown accomplice? Or was this someone else entirely, still undetected? 3.
The organized crime or ritual killing theory. One of the most bizarre theories suggests that the murders were not random, but a planned execution. Some detectives have considered: was this a gang initiation?
A satanic ritual killing? A targeted attack on the shop owners?
The deliberate execution-style killings, the fire, and the unusual treatment of Amy Ayers have led some to believe this crime was more than just a robbery gone wrong. Could the real killers be part of a larger, hidden network? The DNA that could change everything in 2008. The entire case changed forever when new DNA testing revealed that the crime scene DNA did not match any of the original suspects. This meant that Springsteen and Scott, the men wrongfully convicted, were innocent. The real killer's DNA was still out there. If we find a match, we could finally solve this case. But here's the problem. The DNA is unidentified. It doesn't match anyone in the system. That means the killers were never arrested for another crime, or never had their DNA collected. This case now depends on one thing: if, someday, a suspect's DNA gets entered into the system and matches the crime scene. Could that happen tomorrow?
Next year?
Or never? That's what makes this case so frustrating and terrifying. Will this case ever be solved? With new forensic technology, there is still hope. Advanced genealogical DNA testing like in the Golden State Killer case could trace the killer's relatives and eventually led to them. Law enforcement regularly retests DNA samples, hoping for a breakthrough match. New witnesses could still come forward, especially if someone has been hiding a dark secret for decades. But until that day comes, the families of Jennifer, Sarah, Liza, and Amy will keep fighting for justice. The unsettling truth, whoever did this got away with it. They walked out of that burning yogurt shop into the darkness of Austin streets, leaving behind 4 innocent girls and a city that would never forget.
But one thing is certain. They didn't disappear. They're somewhere out there. And one day, they might finally be caught.